services are still on high alert as there are confirmed reports from officials in Japan that possibility of a nuclear meltdown is very high in Fukushima. And so experts in Russia are now monitoring, measuring levels of radiation not only in Russia's Far East, but also in the Arctic, for example. They are also saying that even in the worst-case scenario, the country should be spared any fallout. But what we know from independent experts is that a lot depends on the weather. The good news is that the wind is now going in the direction of the Pacific Ocean. But the weather is changeable and things could also quickly. If the worst scenario takes place and if there is an explosion inside a reactor at the Fukushima plant, that would mean that radiation will be spreading in waves, and this region of Russia would be the closest to the epicenter of the nuclear tragedy. Yuzhno-Sakhalinsk, where we are now, is only 600 miles away from Fukushima, and Russia's Kuril Islands are some 200 miles. Now, people, of course, have been worrisome about the latest news, and they've been closely monitoring reports on TV. In the beginning, they were afraid of another natural disaster hitting the coast of Yuzhno-Sakhalinsk. What they're afraid of now is about a possibility of radiation contamination. And they've been calling emergencies ministry. The line is almost always busy and trying to find out what preventive measures could be taken. Many told me that as they watch news reports, they can't believe their eyes that this disaster in Fukushima is unfolding so close in such a vicinity to Russia's borders. If in the beginning, shortly after the earthquake and tsunami in Japan, they were mostly afraid of a natural disaster which could hit the northeastern coast of Russia, they are afraid of another Chernobyl now, which could happen close to their homes.
Radiation levels 700 times higher than normal have been recorded at a second nuclear power plant in northeastern Japan. Authorities are currently investigating the claims at the facility in Onagawa. Initial reports said the radiation may have blown in from Fukushima. Dr. Robert Jacobs from the Hiroshima Peace Institute says that if that's the case, the 20-kilometer exclusion zone around the Fukushima reactor may not be enough.
The claims of the Japanese government at this point is that the radiation at the Onagawa reactor are not coming from the reactors at that site, but are actually from Fukushima number 1, from the explosion at Fukushima number 1. So this is worrying as well, because if this is true, this would indicate that the radiation from Fukushima has reached quite a distance from the plant itself. The claims are that the radiation levels were high briefly and then went down, and this would correspond to the timing of the explosion in Fukushima. But as I say, seeing as how the evacuation area has been 10, 15, 20 kilometers away, if in the next prefecture, if measurable radiation was present, then obviously radiation is spreading beyond the evacuated area. But it is on the other side of the bay from Sendai. It's north of Sendai, whereas the Fukushima site is south of Sendai. So that would be quite a distance. That would certainly indicate that if it did travel that far, that there was bound to have been measurable radiation in Sendai city itself. I think that there's very conflicting reports coming out. On the one hand, you have the Japanese government claiming that there was some melting of the fuel in the number 3 reactor at Fukushima number 1 site, and then you also have reports that they were in error when they said that any of the fuel had melted. There's two possibilities. Obviously, one is that dire information is being withheld in an effort to make the situation seem better than it is and also to avoid panic. But the other, perhaps more likely scenario is that the government is not quite certain of the state of affairs in the reactors. And so you're finding conflicting reports coming out from different spokespeople. But either scenario certainly suggests that the situation is far from under control.